I am kind of desperately seeking answers and exploring this idea of the things that we kind of accept, the tropes we accept, the narratives we accept in being creative artists, and that the idea of our worth and our value in the world is only as good as the next gig that we have, and why they're not more social safety nets for more of us in freelancing positions, how we're defining that, how we're deciding who gets what with that. So, yeah, I feel like we need to have some discussions. We need to have some talks about that whole gig economy and just our place in our own society and whether it's acceptable that we're this vulnerable in times like this.
You're listening to The Creative Imposter, episode number 97. Welcome to The Creative Imposter. I'm Andrea Klunder. Have you ever had that experience where you discover someone from afar and you think, I have to meet her? And then you do. And you immediately launch into a deep conversation that leaves you feeling enriched and restored by the end? Well, I have a treat for you. Today, I'm letting you in on just such a conversation between me and jazz musician, vocalist, and songwriter Michel Thomas. I discovered Michel Thomas when my friend Davin Youngs, who you met back on episode 82, shared on Facebook that she was giving a live in-home concert via Facebook right around the week we all first began hearing the phrase, shelter in place. See, Michelle was just about to go into the studio with her live band to record her new album, a crucial endeavor for a regional musician who makes her living from performance gigs. And then the bottom dropped out. I caught the playback of that performance with just her and her husband on percussion using some studio backing tracks that had been created for rehearsal. And what stuck out to me the most, besides Michelle's incredible voice, was just their willingness to show up, to put on a performance and entertain their community, and to let it be completely imperfect. It was one of those moments that I couldn't help feeling the show must go on deep in my bones. But what I didn't expect when I connected online with Michelle is a philosophical deep dive into what it means to be an artist in society, the implications of this economic disaster on those of us who are and have been part of the quote-unquote gig economy since, as Michelle puts it, the dawn of time, and how we value people in society and ourselves based on our work. I promise it's not as heavy as it may sound. Michelle is full of joy and hope, and this episode is full of inspired thinking and even some laughter. I implore you to stick around to the very end. I know my own attention span is short these days, but it will be well worth it. I'll let Michelle take us into the interview with her song.
From the pharaohs of antiquity to the Zulu kings of old, the most golden of a family tree, 'twas to you no doubt bestowed. This message you relay to me, bashful irony in tow, but I know because you told me so. Woo, 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 woo.
Okay, so just now you said something which I want to catch before I forget. And that is that you were referencing how I discovered you, which is your live stream on Facebook of a little impromptu house concert that you gave. And you said that you were kind of second guessing, like you weren't sure if doing the live stream of the house concert was the right thing to do right then. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We have been a week into having lost a lot of gigs, and we knew we weren't going to be performing for a long time. We were just literally days away from scheduled studio sessions to record my next album. And I was just kind of falling into a downward spiral of just despair. And my husband was just like, you know what? let's just get online. And with the demo tracks that we had been creating mostly for the purpose of rehearsal, he was like, let me see if I can get something together, and you and me, we can perform a few samples of these tracks we were going to record, just so we have a chance to do it like we needed it. We've been working so long on this music and on preparing for this recording. And he was like, we can still put something out into the world and let people know what we were planning. And I had second guesses about it just because I was like, we're not ready. I know we're not polished yet. We had so many ways we're going to do this in the studio. And I don't know, how's this going to work? Is it going to even come off as good? And I'm really glad he really convinced me. He's like, it's not about that. Forget about that at this point. That there's no more of that. Like, there's no more of thinking about all that polished stuff. Just get up and do what we know how to do. So I went into it just with that trepidation, knowing that I was going to be fully feeling awkward and just really self conscious about how some of this music was being presented for the first time. But yeah, that's what it was. And I have to wonder for a lot of artists that have not done a lot of the live streaming just yet. We just don't know yet. It's a different animal, it's a different machine performing in front of a camera for an audience you can't see.
Yeah, it's super weird. So, one thing you may or may not know about me is that I also have a performance background. So, before I did the whole podcasting thing, I've been a singer for my whole life, kind of similar to you. Like, I grew up singing in the church
Yeah.
and then also did a lot of theater and performing growing up and throughout my life. And the live stream thing is weird because it's not recording,
Yeah.
it's not like being in the studio,
Hmm.
but you also don't have that audience feedback.
Yeah, you don't. Like yeah, it's in between. It's a really weird place in between because already with just performing for a recording and performing live before live human beings, they're already, to me, very separate platforms and you deal with them differently. And yeah, you're right. This live streaming thing is somewhere in between those two things and it's kind of bizarre.
Something else that you said just now was that you needed to do it. And so I've been looking at all of the content creators and coaches and yoga teachers and all these people who I know and who I'm friends with and who I follow online who are putting out classes and Zoom calls and tutorials and meditations and all of these things. And I've been thinking about it from the perspective of you're doing it for your community. You're doing it to help the people who follow you. You're offering a service. And I had not stopped to think about how, yes, that is true.
Hmm.
And also, we need it. The ones who are putting out the content, the ones who are publishing the videos, the ones who are doing the live streams, there's something inherently necessary or rewarding for us too.
Absolutely. I feel like it's kind of a cyclical thing. I would hope that this is kind of at the heart of any creative people, but particularly performers of any sort that do this as our own self expression, which we need, and to communicate our ideas and our identity into the world. It's another means of doing that. And it's a relationship of sorts. We mostly get stereotyped, especially as maybe solo performers or musicians and things or artists, that we live for the crowd, we live for the audience, we live for that attention. It's about attention. And I know a lot gets put out there in terms of like performers being very kind of attention grabbing and maybe a little self centered because of that. But I definitely think it goes deeper for certain. And for me, when I consider myself kind of an extrovert introvert, my motivations for performing for people are a little bit different. It is about a connection outside of yourself. And it does definitely help to also know when you are doing, I guess, the groundwork and doing the artistic work to really understand that what you have to offer the world is also important for them too. This is important for your community. It's important for people to hear, but it's a reciprocal thing. I feel like if you're in this for good reason as an artist, then yeah, you understand that this is vital to you to express your creations, express your art as it is for people to hear it and experience it and to some degree consume it.
So then what sort of feedback did you receive from your followers, your community, your audience? What happened afterwards?
No, I got a lot of feedback. There were a lot of comments, lots of friends and family, and just people who have continued to support me. And it was kind of usual feedback that I expected. But what I also really liked that I saw in the comment section was that a lot of my friends and family were connecting with each other through the feed, through the thread. And
Oh.
so people would show up and be like, "Oh, hey, hey, Brady, what's going on? What are you doing?" And they'd start having conversations right on the feed. And I loved that. That was killing me. I was just like, this is awesome. You guys are like recreating like a jazz club experience. You're just doing it virtually. That made me really happy for some reason. I was just like, awesome. We're getting to connect in so many different ways. And I guess that's what's also kind of fun about the live stream thing, too, especially at this point for most artists. It's like if we're entering into this for the first time, it's going to be pretty casual coming out the gate. Like, no one's going to come into this with any kind of like polished, here's a concert for you,
Mhm.
everyone's going to come into it and talk back and forth with your audience. And as me and my husband were tripping over each other in our little small space and and forgetting about things we tried to script for ourselves early in their day, looking back on it, I really did like that aspect of it, of just we're just around friends, we're around community, and we're giving this offering, but we're also just happy to kind of be saying hi. How's everybody doing? That was one thing that I thought was highlighted for me in this particular weird world now of the live streaming thing. It's just like, oh, that can happen too. People can connect with one another as they're in the experience.
So let's go back because we just kind of jumped right into my own curiosity. So thank you for indulging that.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
tell us a little bit about what is business as usual for you? Because yes, we're talking about this live performance that you did on Facebook. We're talking about an album that you were going to record. For you as a musician, as a music professional, what does your business, what does your work typically look like? Or what was it supposed to look like for the next few
Mm.
months?
Yeah. I'm a jazz artist, vocalist in Chicago, where I was born and raised and where I've performed for most of my life. And business as usual in my world was split up between performing live performances around Chicago and many of the jazz clubs here, many restaurants that have music, many hotels, lounges, things like that. And then also kind of private and corporate music work. I freelance with several different bands where we do a lot of wedding work and a lot of corporate events. And then also my own business. I have an independent voice teaching, voice coaching studio that I've been running for about 16 years now. And so I have a small roster of students that I teach on a weekly basis, 3 or 4 days a week. And that was kind of the makeup of my overall career. In terms of what was coming up on the docket, it was 2 weeks ago. And it was so funny. We were talking to another friend, a musician of ours, last night. And it's kind of like sharing these stories of like, where were you when the entire bottom dropped out of like the world? What was happening? What all did you lose? And just comparing our war stories of what gigs we had just instantaneously lost in a 48-hour period. But me and my husband had just headed out to a rehearsal with a rock band that we happen to work with. And it's kind of a unique situation because even though both of us are jazz musicians, we have this once a year engagement with a rock band. And it was a really great cool thing, and we got to reconnect with these great musicians that we love to see and work with. And one of those musicians actually were traveling from the East Coast all the way here to perform that weekend for St. Patty's weekend. And he got here and he was freaking out and he was just like, I don't know, guys, things are not looking good. I don't know about doing these gigs this weekend. I don't think it's smart. I'm hearing bad things are coming. And we all had a big band meeting. And for the first time in like probably a good 18 years of performing with one another, we disbanded, like not disbanded the band, but we decided not to do this weekend of performances. And so that was a voluntary choice
Mhm.
to remove ourselves. And then, yeah, as the next couple of days started coming, my husband, who's my drummer, my producer, my music director, he also teaches as well. And he teaches at a number of universities. He was getting calls about changing over to online teaching. A number of his weekly standing gigs that he had at various lounges around Chicago got dropped instantly. I had a couple of corporate private events coming up. Those got postponed. And then the last thing to go was the recording, because as I started talking with my musicians, I was feeling a sense of insecurity and kind of fear from them too, which I totally understood. And I was like, well, I'm not going to go into this with that kind of nervous energy going on.
Mm.
But as it turned out, like just a couple of days later, then that's when all the shelter in place started. So even if we had wanted to go forward, we weren't going to be doing that. So Yeah, it it's just been a lot of, as you know, as everyone knows, it's been a lot of changes very, very quickly in a really quickly changing situation around the world, you know?
And so it's not only lost opportunity, right? It's lost income.
Mhm.
What are you doing about that? What's happening?
Gosh. I in many ways, I'm doing probably far too many things because my brain is just absolutely scattered right now. I'm scrabbling for ideas and trying to figure out, I guess, how to remedy immediate issues of just like the loss of income, the transitioning over to how we're doing any of the work that we still have. So, in the case of me and my husband, just being fortunate enough to have had longstanding teaching in the teaching profession of just music, that we have a little bit of that to still hold on to. And we're doing a lot of work on a daily basis just to adapt now to having to teach from home. He's a drummer, which presents an entirely like unique situation.
Your neighbors are so happy he's
Oh
home
my
all day.
god, yeah, exactly. But seriously, on that tip, like I'm really grateful to our, at least our immediate neighbors to our right and left, because they're very supportive and they're just like, no, it's okay, we understand. But he's finding a way though. I mean, he actually taught a lesson before we even started this interview today. He was literally in the middle of it, just changing things and miking things and kind of finding ways to like communicate methods and things that, I overheard him just talking to a student and everything. And so we're in the midst of that. I had a little bit of an easier transition just because I was already, I want to say like half of my student roster, I was already teaching via Skype or
Oh,
FaceTime lessons. Yeah, for the past like year and a half or so. And so that was not a hard transition for me to be able to say to everyone, okay, this is what we're switching over to. And I'm focusing right now just talking about that part of it because it's like, I guess our day to day immediate things that we're working with is just trying to stay afloat economically, just trying to keep up with the things that we just need, just needs right now. But as far as the performance and particularly the recording, it caught me at a really tough time because this was going to be my third album release and I had a lot riding on it. Releasing music is such an essential thing for musical artists, and yet it's such a strange thing too because it's a really super expensive investment and endeavor
yeah,
that you can't really get a tangible rate of return on right away. Like,
right.
you're having faith in the fact that you're going to go out and push this, promote it, hopefully have it help you find more performance opportunities, more reviews, more attention, more exposure, in the hopes that that's what you're going to keep building on and creating momentum for your performance career, so that you can have more opportunities. So I did have a lot riding on it. This was hopefully going to be taking us to the next steps in my own performance career. And right now, I don't quite know how I'm going to remedy that. Our plan was to actually go and record at a studio here in Chicago with our live band, but we also happen to have a home studio here. And my husband, who has been cultivating that for probably about 16, 17 years as well now, and he is an engineer as well. We did actually record my last album in our home studio, and that was a more produced album. But with this one, we wanted to kind of have a little bit of both. We wanted to be able to go into a studio with a full band and have a kind of full live band experience, which is really typical for most jazz music.
Hmm.
But after all of this went down, it had me really rethinking that format now and how to address that differently so that I'm not stifled from recording and from releasing music. It's just, I've been in a lot of deep reflection about these things in terms of how we execute our careers as musicians, and particularly as jazz musicians, particularly as regional and local musicians, which is what I am at this point still, and aspiring to hopefully have a wider audience one day. It's really a craft and a feat and a lot of work and investment that goes into releasing music. I don't know if people sometimes realize it, just because we live in an age where everyone kind of have a home studio and have access to recording equipment, right? But in terms of the time that goes into releasing music, releasing good content, releasing the type of music that affords you a wider audience. It's just, there's so much that just goes into that, and it's not so simple. So I've had to sit down and kind of start rethinking about what that means, why I'm releasing music, kind of getting to the deeper why of it, for whom. And yeah, and like I said, the most direct thing, just finding a means of doing that. I hate to say where I have more control, because I've also given up that illusion as of the last few weeks. Control? That's
What's
hilarious.
that? But at the same time, I think that when things feel very chaotic and very out of control, there's also, okay, what do I have control over? So it's not
Yeah,
like you're trying to be more controlling, it's just reassessing. I can't control 500 things, but
yeah,
what can I? Where can I grasp onto something rather
yeah.
than just leaving it in this limbo? Because, I imagine that the type of music that you're writing for the album, the way that you're arranging the music is different if you're going to
Mhm.
do it as individual sessions
Right.
versus a live band feel. Like the process
Absolutely.
is different and the music
Yeah.
itself is different.
Much different. And as I said too, it's kind of related, as we were kind of having this little powwow with our musician friend last night, because she was also in the same boat. She was about to go into the studio the same way that I was. I know a few more musicians who were just on the brink of that here. And especially just talking about the jazz genre and what I feel has traditionally been the core of it being a live performance, the core of it being able to capture live performance in recordings and live recordings and studio recordings. It feels like that's something that's kind of central to the characteristic of what gives you street cred as a as a jazz musician.
Sure.
It's just like that's the real deal. People know that you're for real when it's like that. As compared to some of my colleagues who might be in other genres of music, whose music is fully produced, and they are able to have this flexibility of working with tracks and beats and produced tracks, and not having to be in a studio with acoustic instruments or live musicians, and kind of having the mobility to move around that way. It got me thinking, though. I was just like, I don't know, maybe as a jazz artist in this genre, maybe we all need to be rethinking that now at this point, in terms of how we put our music together, how we put recordings together, I guess. So I don't know the answer to it just yet, but I'm definitely trying to break myself out of whatever I thought was standard and normal before, because I was preparing for standard and normal and that got blown up basically. So I was like, well, it's either adapt to something that's not standard and normal or just give up. And I'm not ready to give up just yet.
Yeah. I know that you mentioned that you were devastated, this place where you're kind of weighing the pros and cons and trying to figure out, like, going back to the essential why. And I know my experience has been every day, like, this client is contacting me and saying, I need to put my contract on hold. And this client is saying, I need to release more content. And this client is saying, we don't know if we have money anymore. Can we change our budget?
Yeah.
There's so much fluctuation happening. And then I also teach an after school program, and that obviously is canceled. But then, like a week later, the nonprofit organization that funds it said, well, we've already budgeted to pay everyone. We're still going to pay everyone, but we want you to find a creative way to connect with your students online. And I'm like, half of my students don't even have smartphones, let alone a
Hello.
computer
Yeah.
at home. How,
Right. 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 Oh, that's hilarious. Oh my God.
like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
But I feel like I've been holding my head in my hands and going, think, brain, think, think, think. Like I'm trying to get my brain to like grow a few sizes
like
overnight.
like really quickly. Yeah.
All of that is just to say, I'm wondering for you, are you in that think, think, think space, or are you connecting intuitively? Like, what are the practices that you have for sort of really reaching deep right now to find the answers to these questions for your own
Oh,
practice?
wow. I mean, first, thank you for that image, because I did not have the words to explain what that feeling was. And you're right. It is like, can I get my brain to grow exponentially
Mm-hmm.
and learn everything there is to learn that I need to move on, like tomorrow, I've been on an emotional roller coaster. I've just been like fluctuating between like slipping back and forth into depression
Yeah.
and kind of getting up the next day and it's like, let me sleep it off and figure out what's going on tomorrow. And then being busy with, honestly, it's just busy with survival right now. It's like
Yeah.
trying to survive things like this when you're kind of in a position of vulnerability is enough to keep you busy and you're in that think mode. And then also times where it's just like, I have no focus right now. I am ADD because there's 100 things coming at me in my inbox of ways to survive the COVID virus
Right.
as a musician. And sign up for this relief over here. Here's about 20 programs that you can sign up for, grants and loans and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, oh, wow, that's going to take a lot of time. I have to devote a day to that. And then still trying to find the space to, because I don't even think I was dealing with it for a few days. It wasn't until a friend of mine pointed out to me in such a sharp way, because after everything kind of dissolved with the recording, and I was just like, well, it's the way it has to be. On the outside, I'm just trying to be strong and stuff. And she was just like, yeah, you're lying. You're really devastated about this. She actually said it to me. Like
Yeah.
I had not thought that to myself because I was just like, no, I gotta move on. I gotta make do. That's what you have to do. I have to be flexible. And she's like, you're devastated. Stop lying. It's just one of those things. I don't know, when people have to point out to you something you're feeling that you're not dealing with. It hit me in my chest and I was like, and I think that's when I let myself just like be depressed for a couple of days and more than a couple of days because it doesn't even work that way. It comes in and out.
Yeah.
But I also just was enough to give myself permission to be like, you know what? There's nothing else I can do. Like, I'm not going to will myself out of the situation, particularly if I'm feeling defeated right now, which takes away my energy, which takes away my confidence. I can't do anything until those things are dealt with. So
Yeah.
I obviously have to involve in some kind of self care right now and not be afraid of feeling discouraged at
Yeah.
the moment, not be afraid of feeling kind of in despair about things because it's more than just me. It's the world around me. I'm watching every day, just watching our society and watching our systems in place that there's a lot of things out there that are to be questioned and that have failed us in many ways, and that I can't take the full onus of everything on me in terms of like, I gotta pull myself up by the bootstraps and make the best of the situation. There's some serious structures in place that are challenging for all of us, and it's kind of unrealistic to think that we're gonna by ourselves, just singly, individually, somehow overcome them. So I've been in deep places. I've been in some deep
Yeah.
reflection. I just started finding some books to read. I was trying to like get in touch with just my intuition and just let it lead me to like, what do I need to do for me? What do I need to do for nurture for me right now? What's going to help me think better? And not just feel better, because I don't know that it's warranted that we should feel better right now. I don't think we should feel better. And sometimes we need to sit with that discomfort. There's a reason for it. But what's going to help me think better? What's going to help me process through what's going on and help me function somehow in the way that I need to right now?
Yeah, I totally agree with that because similarly to you, at first I was like, okay, this is fine. I've got everything under control. I'm going to go get some groceries and then I'm going to make a plan and then I'm going to do this and then I'm going to set up a Zoom call with my community that I normally meet with online and then I'm going to do this podcast series and then I'm going to do this and it's fine. And I'm good. I'm healthy. I'm safe. And then it was like not till several days later that I was like, I cannot put on clothes today. I have just watched an entire back season of House Hunters International on HGTV because it's comforting. It
Yes.
doesn't require anything from me. It allows me to dream about the distant future in which I can go outside and go to another country
Oh my
and
God.
everything is normal in House Hunters, you know?
Right, right. I can live vicariously. Yeah, that was me and Gilmore Girls. Just repeat the Gilmore Girls.
But there
So,
is also that need to feel how you feel,
yeah,
right? We don't have to be okay every single moment.
yeah,
And we don't also have to have a solution because I mean that's the other thing that's been stressful is all these things online of like take this yoga class, do this meditation, sign up for this economic relief.
yeah. And I'm getting to a point that I'm starting to kind of question and challenge that too, just as an overall mentality, I guess, in our society, because we've been seeing a lot of stuff in the news right now in terms of talking about the gig economy.
Yeah.
Having a lot of discussions with my husband, as we always do, about just, we talk about politics a lot, we talk about race and culture a lot, and just about the systems that we have built in our country. And it's just interesting to me that you're suddenly seeing more in the media about the concept of gig economy, and it's being mostly connected to a lot of service workers right now, and delivery people, and Uber and Lyft, and all these different industries. And we were talking about the fact, it's just like, man, if you talk to artists and musicians, we know the gig economy. That's
Yep.
been a standard. That's our lives. We've lived that since the dawn of time. And it's funny to watch it through other industries right now. But we were also saying, wow, if they had only talked to us, we could have told them how bad this was going to be, how vulnerable everyone would be, because the gig economy gets romanticized and gets glamorized. And it's just like, it's not glamorous, guys. It's not. You're living from gig to gig. You're living from paycheck to paycheck. And one of the things that's really coming to my mind right now is just like the concept of our value to one another in a society, like how a society sets up your value to another human being, especially when it comes to the exchange of not just material things, but of service and of energy and work to
Uh-huh.
one another.
Yeah.
And I am definitely at this time kind of questioning how we have set up the merits of who gets to have value, who gets to have financial security, who gets to have a stability in their lives based on the vocation that they have chosen, and how we characterize that. I'm doing a lot of writing right now, and actually not music writing. I had already been writing a blog for a long time on my website,
Yeah.
and I was in and out of it. I hadn't really owned that I was a writer just yet. I just figured I was just doing some online journaling that
Yeah.
maybe somebody will read every once in a while. But I'm coming back around to, with this time that I have, kind of committing to that and writing more, because I am kind of desperately seeking answers and exploring this idea of the things that we kind of accept, the tropes we accept, the narratives we accept in being creative artists, and that the idea of our worth and our value in the world is only as good as the next gig that we have, and why they're not more social safety nets for more of us in freelancing positions, how we're defining that, how we're deciding who gets what with that. So yeah, I feel like we need to have some discussions. We need to have some talks about that whole gig economy and just our place in our own society, and whether it's acceptable that we're this vulnerable in times like this. People are on the brinks of being homeless and having no ability or opportunity to have savings and put away gobs of money, and have health care. I mean, we're already in that climate right now. We already, even in our political climate, are questioning basic human rights. I really hope we're coming to a paradigm shift in America. We obviously have been put in a situation where we literally have had to depend on one another. It's a matter of life and death. Like, we're in shelter in place right now because we're trying to save one another. We're trying to save ourselves. We're trying to save one another. And I'm wondering if that is helping to shift some things in our society in terms of how we're doing things.
In an ideal world, if you can even see this far, a little thought experiment here,
Mm-hmm.
what positive could you see? And you can make this as specific to your industry and your career,
Mm-hmm.
or since we've already talked about like all of society right now,
Right, right.
more general to all of society, what possible bright future do you think could come out of all of this?
So what I would hope for, and definitely like as an idealist, that's what I'm always looking towards.
I had a feeling.
Yeah, very brutally. I don't know if I know exactly how this would play out in detail, but at the core of it, it starts with how we value one another. So I guess, for instance, just reading through some articles this past week in terms of talking about the loss of jobs for musicians. And, I was kind of unsettled by the fact that there seemed to be this tone overall that, even though the sad thing was kind of happening and many musicians were finding themselves like in kind of desperate measures right now, that we kind of chosen this lot in life. So we should expect that this is what our possible fate is and destiny is in life. And that's been so unsettling to me because as a musician, talking to other creatives and artists, we know how essential our work is to the world around us, but that we have continued to kind of spin this narrative of it being non essential. It's not as essential as other things. It kind of reminds me, it creates this kind of like Hunger Games atmosphere. It does for musicians and artists that you're hustling so hard all the time just to get yourself heard, to get leverage in your career, to prove that you are worthy of people's investment in your career, in your product, in your music. So I would really hope one day that we maybe start looking differently at that and at least shift to understanding that no, the arts and music and creative pursuits are an essential part of our society, and that the people who work in it are indeed workers. We're not
Mhm.
just artists. I'm writing right now about this experience we had once with working in a restaurant and also a bar, but had music there. And I was working there with my husband and a trio some years ago. And the place was really bustling and loud and crowded. And we played about 3 hours there. We played about three sets. And between our sets, we had some breaks. And the restaurant was nice enough to give us a little private room in the back to sit down and have our breaks in away from the patrons and everything. And I remember we were sitting back there during a couple of breaks and we would chat a little bit and have a little small talk. But then, we would kind of get quiet after a while because we were just literally resting from having performed in this really loud setting, in a setting where, we're kind of considered kind of background music. And for some reason, there was a couple other people back in this room with us. And there's some guy who was like in a slick suit and was on his phone and kind of being a little obnoxious and talking really loud on his phone, but he was obviously working in some kind of finance arena or career field and
Making deals.
making deals. He was on the phone just wheeling and dealing. And and he kind of is like comes over to us after a while, after he gets off his phone call or whatever. And I think he might have said like, "How you guys doing tonight?" or something like that. But then it was like before even saying anything else, he just kind of quipped and made the statement to us. He was just like, "Oh, what are you guys looking so down for? It's not like you're out here digging ditches or anything. Come on, get a smile on your face." And my husband's like literally putting like a hand on my shoulder, like keep me down in my seat. I'm just like, excuse. He's like, don't just let it go, let it go. But I'm writing about a lot of those experiences right now because it's something so telling in the mentalities towards artists and musicians who are performing. And I don't know what it is in our society that kind of has this idea that because we're performing music, because we're doing this thing, that we're not really working,
Mm-hmm.
that because we're doing something that we love,
Mm-hmm.
which I would hope so. I would hope everyone's doing something that they love as a livelihood. I would hope that you're in a vocation that you're good at and that is fulfilling for you. And that's my hope for the whole world. But for some reason in our society, we have a backwards way of looking at what fulfills you and what work is and what the value of those two things are, depending on how much you love your job. Because I always get this impression from society. It's just like, well, you love so much what you do. I've even heard musicians say it's like, I love it so much. I would even do it for no money. I would do it for no pay. And I hate that.
Yeah. Yep.
I hate that gets like turned into this thing where somehow wanting to make a sustainable living at what you do and love is considered greedy if you enjoy your work, if you were doing work that you're fulfilled by. I guess that's all a meandering way to say that we have to start having different ideas about work and life balance, work and the value of anyone who is working in our society or anyone. I'm even not defining it that way. Just anyone who's giving, who's contributing to your
Mm-hmm.
society in some sort of positive way. It's like we need to have some shifts in that thinking, and I think from there we'll make better choices about how to structure that in our society. I guess maybe I am having my own personal paradigm shift right now. And I'm looking at like all the things we're doing to kind of pivot and readapt to our careers. It's what we're needing to do if we want to continue doing what we want to do. But it's almost like I'm kind of separating that now. It's like what I do is not who I am. I'm also trying to spend time reflecting on like who I am and the why behind why I do these things. I don't want to get caught up any longer in the hustle and the push to like keep busy, keep doing these things. You have to do this, blah, 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 blah. because I was finding myself fatigued. I actually had begun to deal with some major shifts in my health as a result of work.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had to sit myself down from that. It was a direct connection. I saw it right there. It's like, oh, this is damaging my health.
Yeah.
And what am I going to do about that? How am I going to reconcile the fact that I really desire to have this career, but I also desire to have a quality of life and have my health, because I don't have anything without that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just been a lot of bigger perspective, bigger world thinking for me as of late.
Totally. That's seriously like a whole other episode that you and I could have, is this separation of who I am versus what I do. Because I
Yeah.
think as creatives, a lot of times those two things are sort of like mashed together and it's very hard to separate them, but
It's
they are
very
actually
hard.
separate.
They are, yeah. And part of it is just because of the beauty of what we do, because it is a life-giving thing. Music and the arts are life-giving. They're life-enforcing, you know? We are, as artists, we're the heart and emotions of our society. We're the pulse of the conscious of our society. That's what we're always serving in that way. And so we need to dig in even deeper right now into whatever we're doing. We're conscious, we're emotions, we're heartbeat, we're a pulse. And we need more now than ever to remind all of us of our humanity in this moment. And the arts have the opportunity to do that if we're getting really focused about it. This is not just about entertainment. This is not just about if I'm going to be a star or something. I really have a role in helping to change my world around me through exactly what I do. I don't have to go any further or become a politician or become a community organizer. I mean, I can connect those things to it, but this thing that I do, this work that I have cultivated and worked to craft, my music by itself, by even focusing on that, I'm doing a service to my community, to my world around me. So maybe I've just gotten a little bit more militant about artists and creatives, because I'm just like, we're not going no place. We've been here forever since the dawn of time. And it's time. It's time to rise up.
That's amazing. Michelle, is there anything else that you feel like you want to share with the Creative Imposter listeners? Anything that you feel the community needs to hear right now? Anything you didn't get a chance to say?
The message I would just want to keep putting out there is that whatever you're doing, especially if you're in the gig economy, in service or in creative fields, in performance and music and arts, your work is worthy of high value. And you're a worker. You're a worker, and you deserve to be treated with the dignity and respect of someone who works and contributes to your world around you. And yeah, this moment right now that we're in doesn't have to end all of that. But, I guess the other thing is just like take time for yourself and know that you don't have to be in the hustle. You need rest. you need you need to feel your feelings. You need rest in order to make it another day. So, yeah, relax a little bit.
Your work is of high value, and you deserve to be treated with the dignity and respect of someone who works and contributes to your world around you. Full disclosure, I probably listened to this episode 3 or 4 times during editing, and each time I caught different moments that made me laugh or feel something in my gut. So much gratitude to Michelle for this episode. You can find links to Michelle's music and her blog in the show notes for this episode at thecreativeimposter.com/097, linked conveniently for you in the description for this episode in your app. There, you will also discover links to connect with me if you'd like support developing, launching, or making your own podcast better and better. I'm even thinking about creating a free online workshop or two to make up for all the in-person speaking events that I'm really missing. The best way to find out if and when that is happening and how to be a part of it is to get on my list. This episode was mixed by Edwin Ruiz of Mondo Machine. Our theme music is by Jovia Armstrong, and right now, you're listening to I Know Because You Told Me So, used with permission from Michel Thomas Music. Thank you so much for listening, and in this moment, I am inviting you to rest, reflect, and then dig in just a little deeper.
for self-adulation. Too long on the other side of that wall. I've been in my chamber of self-depreciation. Can't you see them look at me? 1,000 eyes can never lie. I'm a single bad variety, none more different than I. This message you relay to me, like you alone it broke the mold. But I know because you told me so.